I think it's defined by bureaucratic inertia. When NATO completed its mission in 1989 to 91 by defeating the Soviet adversary and the collapse of the Soviet Union, it should have had a champagne party perhaps and packed up. But bureaucracies like to keep going. And what it has done under Lord Ismay's tag is to keep the Russians not only out, but push the Russians to the east. And of course, this has meant that Russia is now an adversary again. As another great Cold Warrior of Lord Ismay's generation, George Kennan, the great US diplomat, said in the 1990s, expanding NATO on the grounds that Russia, post-Soviet Russia, is an adversary, which it wasn't in the 1990s, will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. It will make it an adversary, and that's what it's done. So the bureaucrats have kept their jobs by maintaining their mission.
All right. You seem to have somewhat of a skeptical view of NATO's actual role in the global geopolitics today. I want to bring it to Dara. Obviously, you are a Russia expert. Is Russia still the formidable foe today, as it was when NATO came into inception 70 years ago?
Well, of course, the modern-day Russian Federation is nowhere near the strategic or military threat that the Soviet Union was, except perhaps with regards to its nuclear arsenal. And it's true that that NATO has struggled quite a bit to find a strategic mission for itself. The expansion eastward, there's been a lot of controversy around that. The counterpoint to Chris's take would be that it did provide the Eastern European states, Poland, Czechia, the Baltic states that were emerging from a long period of imperial rule, the security guarantees that they needed to develop democratic institutions and really consolidate its market economies. But it is true that we're getting to this point where NATO has both gotten so large that there is starting to be divergence of interests, particularly with Turkey. We focus a lot on President Trump, but the diversion of Ankara away from the rest of NATO and its kind of semi-detachment is something that we're looking at quite a bit.
And indeed, that is the catalyst for the comments out of President Macron was the Turkey incursion into northern Syria. That was a unilateral decision that they made, not in tandem with the rest of NATO. Christopher, I just want to come back to you and ask you about Macron's brain-dead comments. What do you think he was trying to achieve? What was his point, his messaging from calling the NATO a brain-dead institution? Is he saying that they simply cannot rely on the principle of Article 5 anymore, that an attack on one member is an attack on all members? Or is he saying that, look, in Europe, we need to start really focusing on this idea of a European defense fund rather than relying on NATO?
Well, Jemima, it's your colleagues at The Economist newspaper had a chance to ask him questions, and he came out with that memorable quote. It'd be great if any of us could have a chance to go back to him and ask that question to him. If it's just us you're asking, we can only infer what he meant. And my answer would be that he meant that there were French troops on the ground in northeast Syria combating the fanatical jihadis of the Islamic State, and one ally, Turkey, with the encouragement of another, the main ally, the United States, invaded that territory with allied troops on the ground on the other side of the barricades. And I think Macron, when saying this is a brain-dead alliance, he meant that allies should not do that sort of thing. They shouldn't attack where another has troops in action without consultation and agreement. Surely allies, especially NATO, has always operated on the principle of unanimity. So that would be my interpretation of his words.
But to pick up on the second part of my question, this notion of a European defense fund and for European states to spend more on the continent's defense spending as opposed to allocating to NATO, do you think that that's an idea that's ever going to take off?
Jemima, it's a very old idea. There was, back in, you mentioned a minute ago, the beginnings of the Cold War back in the 50s, and there was an institution set up in those days called the Western European Union, and that was meant to be a standalone security and defense configuration in Europe, which wouldn't be an alternative or supplant NATO, would be a complement to NATO. So Macron, who is in many ways a Gaullist politician, is picking up on an old idea and dusting it off.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci, and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.